Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hamster's Hobby Hang. How goes? How goes? Still have a bunch of these little frog guys. And the originals we did don't have their faces done, so I don't know. I'll have to figure out work on some of these. Look at this big old mounted gun. Now it's a party. Now it's a frog party. Look at all this. I also think I'll change the weapon color because I tried to do everything but the dude in the purple, and I want a little more separation. So I'm fine with like the belts and bobs having the same color, but I'll maybe do like a metallic-y thing on the weapons and armor. I know I was gonna say it needs like a third color. The frog is multiple colors, right? But we need like a third identifying color for like a material. So it's like frog colors, bits and bobs, same color, fine. Weapon color. But I do usually, for gaming stuff, try to paint like most of the bits and bobs on the belts the same color, just because it's like, no one's really looking at that, right? Yeah, it does kind of look like Battletoads, doesn't it? Cow, that was hard. I didn't play it until the Game Boy, but that was a hard game. But I thought it was very cool. Even just the art on the cartridge was cool. Forget where I got these. It was years ago. Some small miniatures company. I try to remember usually, but it's been so long for that one. Another really hard game that I played on Game Boy but was released beforehand was Ghouls and Ghosts. There was like Ghosts and Goblins or something. Now that was hard, especially for my little kid brain. I don't even think I did not get very far in that game. Try as I might have. It's not fluorescent green. It's just I on here I mix all my colors. I basically have a bunch of single or low pigment count colors. So this is just kind of a slap chop philosophy, and then it's like mostly a dark base and white, and then we just kind of filter and glaze it with mixed thinned colors. So it's just a yellow green that I mixed with a matte paint. My basic palette, just because I mix a lot, I try to have colors that are either one or two pigments at most. Where are we at? This is like the main palette. It's like a cyan, a red, and a yellow, and I try to have a warm and a cool yellow because this is kind of cool, and so to get like a warm orange is tough. I frequently add sort of an ultramarine blue because since this is such a green blue, this gets us the cool end. And then I use black and white. I've been trying to use less pure black, so I'll do like a dark purple as a black, earth tone as a burnt umber. So I basically like just use that. And then like if you don't want to mix them, I have like an orangey red and a green, a pure orange. Cadmium is toxic, be careful with that. I have like this red brown because I use it on bases a lot. I just like it generally a lot. But if I had to just like make the most minimal palette, it's probably this. So I do have another webcam that I thought about putting over the palette and just putting it in the corner of the screen, since I mix all my colors, and maybe that would be interesting to see, but I have not made that happen yet. I do have fluorescent colors with me that I pulled, but I rarely use them. Unless it's like an actual lighting thing, like an object source lighting on the model where it's like a weapon or a lantern or something. So like I probably would use that on this, but this doesn't have any fluorescence. I think it might have worked a little better if I did some fluorescent red right in here, but it still looks pretty glowy without it, so you don't necessarily need it. But generally, I mean, if you're looking for like different fluorescence, they're all very similar in that I've found they're all like pretty thin and annoying. So just because of the nature of the pigments, so they're all gonna have those properties. Here's a Vallejo brand. I've also used Vallejo's like airbrush brand for fluorescence. This is Liquitex. I've used others. They're all fairly similar to me. This is not true of all paints, but yeah. I mean, you know, it's obviously personal preference. I have found that I don't necessarily like mind variants among warbands and stuff, so I don't really worry about matching because I have a fun time with my workflow mixing, and like the value I get out of mixing and in a way that's like fast and satisfying is like worth it to me. You know, like these are slightly different, but they are cohesive enough as a warband. So I totally get the matching thing. Like for my Stormcast, I don't have my case here, sorry. You know, it's the same colors generally, but that's more so that I'm not like trying to match. I'm trying to match less than I'm trying to just keep the paint amount of colors minimal. So it naturally matches because I'm like trying to pull the least amount of paints off the shelf just to make it fast. Because I find what slows me down is like pulling out of the paints to like highlight and whatever. So I guess those are matching now that I think about it, but my dream actually, one of my next armies I want to do for Warhammer is Cities of Sigmar humans. I just have so many of those models because I love them. But I want it to be like sort of a last bastion of humanity where it's all like the survivors and dregs of all these towns and cities have come together, and so they don't all match. And they'll have like different, so if they all the shields or something have like a similar symbol that they've all sort of taken on in this forest, might be the same, but I want like all of the colors to be super different, so there'll be some like unifying thing, but generally they'll be different. So I thought that'd be cool. But I've heard great things about the new Army Painter War Paints, so I don't blame you for that. I haven't used them. I haven't used Army Painter since the original ones that were kind of bad. But I've heard really phenomenal things, honestly, about the new ones. And I've used the speed paints. You know, again, if people like the transparency effects, you know, that works for a lot of people. I've seen great results. I've just been mixing for so long now, mostly because of this stream, where it was like at home, so I just had minimal stuff that I didn't, a lot of my stuff is at the Dwarven Forge studio. That now I'm just used to it, and it doesn't actually make it faster for me to do speed paints. So I own them, but at the studio, but I don't really use them a whole bunch. Yeah, the Army Painter paints, I actually got a set when I was hired at Dwarven Forge because I hadn't painted in a long time. Like, I grew up for years and years painting models. And so when I was getting back into it, just from like working at DF, I was like, oh, I'll get some model paints. Okay, here's a pretty affordable set. And it literally made me question my abilities as a painter. I was like, am I just really bad at this? Because the paints were just such a chore to work with. But they changed them, so good on them. Those colors that I showed for a palette too, I made the mistake over the years of just like buying paints by the set. But if you just get a handful of those colors, like 3 to 5 colors, in a palette that you can kind of mix, just so you can experiment with the new brand of paint itself on multiple minis, that's a good way to start, is with those colors specifically. Or I guess if you have like, you want to try them on a certain mini or warband, and you have a recipe you want to try, that's one way to do too, I guess. But if I were to now get a new brand of paints, I would just get what I showed you, just something like that. These things are like pretty big, so hopefully I don't need new paints for a long time. And if I run out, I have more than ever. These, I do like these too. Both of these, like acrylic wash and this So Flat, it basically is just formulated similarly to miniature paints in that it's matte and it has a pretty good amount of medium in them, where they're thinner than like the tube of artist paint. Kind of like what you would expect if you bought a miniature paint. So that's the main reason I have those on my desk here lying around. Did any of you see the new snow pieces on the stream last night? Kind of excited. We're starting to get a glimpse of that. Yeah, so I'm just gonna start with these. That's pretty much it. Can't wait to empty my wallet again. There you go. Yeah, we're finally getting to the point where there's kind of enough prototypes of those banks where Nate and others can sort of make a scene, or a little mini build out of them. So that's always exciting when, it's one thing to see them across the paint desk and you just stare at them up close, but once they start getting into builds and then they go to like photos and graphics, it like really elevates. It makes it really fun for me, having like been sitting there painting hundreds of them, This doesn't have primer, so I'm actually gonna skip that one for now. Oh, I guess what I will pull out is this purple again because I based these in purple just for reasons. A dark color that can support some of the bluishness that is on here. And a lot of times I like to just start with a color, even if it's all going to get covered up. Yeah, maybe we can do that on Hobby Aim. Do some kind of transition piece. Probably, if I were to picture it, I guess it would be, because the colors are very similar, it's just would be adding one side that's snowier and one side that's icier. So you're going from like the outdoors where the snow is getting blown around into the indoors, which has less of the snow but more kind of the solid ice. It'd be pretty simple. It might be a fun hobby hang thing. And what's fun about starting with the base coat too is we can technically get paint on all of these, even if it's a single layer, which always just feels good mentally for me. I painted the new snow pieces, yeah. Those ice caverns from the old stuff was not me, but I'm working on the Arctic and Aaron is doing the desert. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you liked them. I'm glad the response was cool. Especially because I was kind of in the chat trying to talk about this, but like, especially because it's like not a pure white, and I was kind of trying to approximate like a mostly white, but you can still see like the texture and some variance in an interesting way. So I'm glad it was kind of reading and wasn't just strange. I'm gonna get some primer on this last one. I've been doing like a white or a bright gray recently instead of black. Just find I don't need a lot of pure black shadows for most of my projects. And if I really need a dark shadow, I'll just kind of paint it in. But I found that it has kind of hindered me from getting like the brightness and saturation that I want when I do want it over black. Like I used to prime everything in black, but it kind of held me back on some of the effects that I wanted to do quickly. So I start from more of a middle ground now these days. But I would still paint over black, like, you know, gun to my head. It's not like I am vehemently against it, but sort of transitioned away from it generally. I'm kind of trying to remember what exactly I did here. I think I just did like a random base coat of all of these under these main colors and then did the white to get definition. So maybe I will put a little green on the palette just since we're going for a green. It'll just be quicker than mixing a green and then mixing that with a blue or whatever. This guy wearing pants already is, so we won't get as much of the gradient, but that's alright. This guy's wearing a lot more clothes than the other ones. We have to figure out what those look like. Well, this guy couldn't get the purple, I'm realizing, but it should be just fine, honestly. Maybe it is a superfluous step. I mean, I'm fine with it. It still adds like a more of a middle dark base to start with that's not black. But kind of get some of this yellowishness on here, but especially when I'm starting dark yellow is another one of those colors that's just thin generally because of the pigment that it needs to be yellow. I'm gonna try to get some of it on there to get the progression going. And maybe for these I should just be doing it right over this gray. Kind of looks a little nicer, I think, from the jump. That's sit to drag. But from here, it's kind of just the slap shot philosophy of I'm not going to be doing like a quick dry brush, but I'm just going to be using white sketching to hit the definition with just one color, with being white. And then we can coloring book it kind of with glazes. Sorry about that. I had my mic muted earlier. I was saying, like, that's a huge part of the learning curve that I still run into is just being under the paint lamp and seeing it a certain way, and then I've had it happen where, like, I'm painting it this close to my face and I've spent all this time on it and I put it down and all my work vanishes. So a lot of times I'll take it out from under the lamp and just put it under the room light, or I have a lamp at work that switches between like warm and cool light, so I'll switch the light temperature and see if I can still see the value contrast. Or I'll just take a picture on my phone, which just changing up that visual just by looking at it on your phone, you'll see different things that you don't notice, excuse me, staring at it in person. But even with DF pieces, I run into that too, where I just like, I gotta take it off of the paint desk, out from under the lamp, and just put it on a table somewhere. And how far to push the contrast is another thing I had to learn too, where it's like, go further and you can always knock it down, because here's the thing, we're painting tiny things. And the reason we're doing that is so that they're readable from on a table that we're sitting at or standing at. So you have to exaggerate it to a point where sometimes it seems like too much, but there rarely is just too much contrast and highlight. Like, most of my miniatures almost get to pure white, and then I can glaze it down or knock it down with the layering. But I find I've been more frustrated by not pushing it enough and being too careful, especially in this stage when it's like, we could cover all this up and restart and we've lost very little time, you know what I mean? So I'd rather start super high contrast, and then if I wanted to, I could just reprime this, and I lost like 5 minutes on this miniature, because we've been working on a bunch of these. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I was just doing the one especially, I try not to worry about it, and I just get that sketch like pushed early as possible. Just because I had a habit, you know, sort of a plateau in my painting of just like, my imagination was more saturated and colorful and bright and contrasty than the miniature turned out. And that was my own fault, because I was like being too careful, thinking, is it gonna be too bright with the highlight? It's like, glaze it down then, go further. So anyway, and it's always a back and forth, and it's personal preference. You know, I've kind of developed my workflow, what I like. So let's see. So you can kind of get some color going. Now I think of this as just like a coloring book step, you know? It's probably too much paint on my brush right now, but I don't even need to film this very much, honestly, because acrylic paint always has a little bit of transparency just by its nature. So we can almost go fully opaque just over this stuff, and we'll be able to see the variation. And we can sort of re-highlight it pretty quickly. But the other valuable thing too, even though I'm covering all this up, is it's starting to give me a mental map of the model. So when I go back to these areas to push them further and highlight them, I've kind of like already been across these parts of the model, so I continue to go faster and kind of get more accurate and get a better sense of how I'm approaching the volumes and the shapes. So that's also why I like this method of kind of the sketching style. And I don't normally like prioritize smoothness very frequently. I kind of like a more illustrative, textury kind of style, so you know, I don't mind that happens with this method either. So you see here, this fluorescent green on these guys is just a white that's glazed with a mixed yellow-green with just radiant paints. But it works out well because it looks fluorescent because we have that dark layer under the white sketch. So it's the contrast really that's just by being next to such a dark area like this neck here, it looks even brighter than it would look on its own. So that's also why it's kind of glowing almost. Yeah, for sure. I'm glad. That's kind of what this stream started as being about. It's like, alright, I'm gonna paint stuff. What tips can you get? So you see here we're pretty close to a final, but I think on most of these I did one more of basically the same thing. Do white but less area of white, a single highlight more, and then maybe a thinner glaze, all fast. I'll just like play it by ear kind of. Salt to taste. But we'll probably just do that one more time quickly. And call it pretty good. But yeah, like you can see, right? Like, this back toe doesn't have a lot of paint on it, but you can already see that the shapes of the model are all readable in a nice way. Hello, David. Yeah, I mean, when I do fluorescent, it's basically the method you're watching. Where if it's going to be fluorescent, it's likely very, very bright, right? Obviously. So I just start with a white, and then I'll glaze it the same way, but just with a fluorescent paint. And I'll actually normally start with a non-fluorescent version, just because these are really thin and annoying to get coverage on. So if I were to do this green, I would do like just a mid-green base, highlighted up with this yellow-green matte, and like I would get it to here with regular paints, pretty much. And then, when you start hitting it with more white glaze with the fluorescent, it's going to look even brighter in that spot. So, and I just tend to find it, you know, it's faster coverage that way. Not special white, just a titanium white is pretty much as white as it gets, but it's just a matte white. Sometimes if I need really opaque, fast white, like for this, I would usually just do a regular that is semi-thinned on the palette, just to get not a bunch of like heavy, chunky paint texture on it. But sometimes if I really want to go fast, this is heavy body, straight up like art acrylic, like out of the tube, like it's really thick. I use it pretty rarely. I do use it on like my Warhammer Stormcast weapons. I'm kind of doing like a pseudo non-metallic thing, but I want it to be really fast. So it's like when I just need a punch of white on a non-metallic reflection on a gaming model, I'll do that. But generally, as long as it's a titanium white or like the whitest white in your collection, that is pretty opaque, this black square, as opposed to this is semi-opaque. You know, as long as it's an opaque white. You know, your hobby paints won't have that, but you know, when you use it, it's your favorite white, probably. You know, just go with that. But basically, if you're imagining, if you're looking for fluorescence for like that glowy white, the fluorescent is going to help, but that's not the most important part. It's more like the context around the glowy part. So basically the rules of thumb are nothing else on the model should be brighter than the source of glow. Like if the gun, like the gun thing or a lantern thing, nothing, especially in the light color, should be brighter than the source. So that's like almost pure white, barely glazed with like fluorescent, and the source will be almost the only thing with fluorescent paint on it. And then around it, as it blooms out, avoid that fluorescent paint and go pretty dark. And it's just the fluorescent being next to that is what makes it look super glowy, right? It's like this thing here. If the blade is the source, very little is as bright as the blade. And the most nearby edges are getting almost the same brightness, but then it very quickly falls off into darker reds. So that's the trick for glow. Yeah, from here I'll just get like my brightest highlights. Covering less of an area than the previous white step. And then I'll just do the same glaze, except maybe slightly thinner, just so we still get some white punch now that we have the that kind of second step glaze underneath as a mid. Now this I'm doing almost the pure yellow because it's so thin that I have so much green underneath that I can kind of get away with. This is just kind of like knowing the paints that you use and their properties. I just know that my yellow's really thin, that having the presence of green under it is going to make it lean pretty green anyway, so I'm not even mixing green into it. I'm just letting the context and the sort of optical mixing work for me instead of physically mixing it. Optical mixing being just like when you look at this yellow next to the green, it's going to sort of visually mix for you. And that's that. Now, especially when we have less of the clothing and more of the transition, kind of going with more glazes to make the transition a little nicer. But we probably don't even have to do that here, really. Maybe I'll do some more of this green just in the area that we have it. I do like that transition glaze on that model kind of has a blue-green to it. I'm gonna get some of that going. There we go. It's a cool effect. And what I like is low precision. You know, we're kind of being careful with some of like the highlight, the white sketch steps, but they're not super duper precise. I try to avoid that on gaming stuff because that's what slows you down. Oh, fluorescent blues, yeah. I mean, again, it mostly comes from the white. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. I wish I had like another primed mini. I gotta prime some of these on my desk. Because like, especially on camera, these fish guys look super duper fluorescent, right? But if we were to do some of this fluorescent, this I haven't mixed in a while, it's gonna look even brighter. Just because it's like not even necessarily brighter, but what the fluorescent is doing is absorbing more light than the average paint that's not fluorescent. So it's not even that it's a brighter value, but it's like reflecting more light back at you. So let me try to get some fluorescent. Hopefully I can get it to read on just this toe here. It's a little, I have an idea. This sword thing. So this like looks pretty darn glowy generally, but there's no fluorescent paint on it. So we kind of just got as bright as we could go without fluorescent. Now I have this fluorescent red. As you can see, it almost doesn't look as bright because what are the rules we were talking about earlier? The nearby stuff is pretty close brightness, and you need that for it to read as glow because all these surfaces are going to catch the light the way that it's painted, I think. But we can't quite, unless we go just pure white right here, we can't quite make the source, the blade, brighter. But we can get away with it if we utilize fluorescent paints just on that part. So I'm going to go back to white. Because I still want it to read as like a red thing. You know, if we go like pure white, it's going to look brighter. Well, you'll see. We're doing it right now. But it looks more like a red blade, or a white blade, you know. It's like too white. So I got to a point, at least on the stream with this mini when we did it, of like, I'm just going back and forth with white and red and it's not looking much brighter. But I didn't pull out the fluorescent red. So it's the same steps that we did, little white, and then we're just going to do a little glaze with a fluorescent. And it looks a lot brighter than the surrounding. Enough, at least, in context to make it look, you know, like it's the source of light. I might even take my red, small amount, mix in the fluorescent just to get some of this progression back that I liked. Right? So that's how fluorescence can help you. And look how fast it was too. It was just the same kind of recipe of steps as just layering, but in that one selective spot of using fluorescent, it like changes the whole thing. And makes the effect of glow read a little better. Hey, Hippo. So this is where I think the pitfall for me was, is I would start when I'm like, okay, I'm going to paint the glow. I'm going to start with fluorescent. And it was just a nightmare to get coverage. It's just a nightmare to get coverage with the physical paint. Like, most fluorescents are annoyingly thin. So you saw once I had the red kind of layered up with regular paints, it took me like 5 seconds to do that. Yeah, object source lighting, as in the object of lighting is on the model. We could see the source, the object that's creating the source of light. And we kind of use it interchangeably, but you can have the source be off of the model when you see it, where it's like coming from the ground, like lava, or from the side. It's the same thing as just the painting is telling the story of a light source that's like not natural. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, light is like one of the coolest, most fun things to paint, I think. And once you get it down, it's really fun and pretty easy once you've practiced it. It's literally just nothing should be as bright as the source. And as long as you follow those rules, you're just doing painting as you've always done it. Okay, if that's the rule, I'm just layering further and further out from the source, how I normally do, but I'm just using paints and mixes that aren't as bright as the source. Like, this started here with just like a crappy blunt brush like this, just doing red, like boop, boop, boop. Where would it hit? Where would it hit? Just like not even, it was just a big blob of red, just to get the area down, and then you kind of fiddle with it. It was pouring rain out here in New York today. I think it just stopped. But see, look at this. This is where we started on all these. And it wasn't really that many steps or that much precision. And it's all with just regular paints and layering and glazing. Oh yeah, North Carolina mountains. I have friends in Raleigh, not really the mountains, but... yeah, I'm sure New Jersey got plenty of this today. Trying to think about, I hadn't painted any of these that have clothing, and so thinking about the color, but more so just the separation, because it's like, okay, if the gun and armor have one color, it's like some reflective blue-black thing. And some of the pouches and stuff have purple. And what is the shirt and pants doing? Easy things to go brown or something, but I don't know, I like their oceanic sort of color. And orangey brown would kind of contrast the bluishness though. I don't know. Well, while I think about that, I'll do the weapons and stuff. I think I will go to a pure black here. Oftentimes, when I'm doing non-metallic, I'll pull out black. Just to really get that high contrast that it needs. I'm also realizing I missed our fingers on this side of the gun. So the secret with non-metallic is that it's all the same tricks. Like all of those effects are just layering. It's just kind of like using reference and using observation for how to push the illusion. So the rule of thumb for object source lighting is the same highlighting that we've always done and layering, but nothing is as bright as the source. And the rules of thumb for non-metallic are the brightest bright and the darkest dark really close to each other. Otherwise, you're just layering up a shape and adding the highlights. And, you know, it helps to imagine or use reference of like, how does light, you know, bounce? It's like on the pointy edges and tips, that's where to place your highlight. But at the end of the day, it's all an illusion because, especially on something 3D, like your reflections aren't going to move with your eyes the way that they would on a metallic surface. So it's all kind of a trick anyway. So it's sort of just like pick your place to punch the contrast, put your highlight there, and make sure you put really dark right next to it, and it will usually end up okay. I packed these up and I left them in a backpack, so I hope that they're not, I hope they survive reasonably. But here's some non-metallic. So the most important part about these, like, look, you can look up non-metallic videos. They're going to talk about all this like serious blending, and like if you want to spend the time, you can do that. But the most important part of the illusion is this exact point right here. It's almost black next to almost pure white, right? That's what makes it look reflective. It's the same as highlighting the edge of any other surface, but it's just like the exaggeration of it. And then what's fun is like, where do you place highlight? So this has sort of that rib in the blade. So I put a little highlight of like that upper edge of like the lower kind of rib. I don't know what's called, but catching a highlight like that was kind of fun. The backside was a little more rough because it's the backside, but you know, this was a very quick job. It's just as long as we have, and I think I even like did too much mid-tone and bright, and I just placed a tiny bit of black like right here, and that just is what sells it. This is a huge exaggeration of non-metallic. Like, this is not realistic at all. You know? But it's a magic trick. It's an illusion. And the things that make it look reflective are just how close together the darkest darks and the lightest lights are. This right here. I ruined my brush, sorry. You know, this is a huge exaggeration. This is just like a straight up shape drawn in black, you know? But here, super white on the shield buckle here. Really close to a dark. And other than that, it's just up to interpretation. Where are you placing this stuff? You know, hit edges. A lot of the edges are going to be close to pure white. But it's just the vicinity of the darks and lights to each other. Like, very little of this, I mean, you've seen my style tonight. Like, very little of this is a careful, precise paint job. It's just sort of committing to the highlight spot and then placing shadows really dark, really close to it. And I add some texture too, because I think that lets me get away with less precision. Yeah, don't blend. It will read to your eye without blending. And then from there, once you get the placement of lights and shadows close together, and in a place that maybe makes sense, you will see that before you have to blend. And then you can change it too, which is also less frustrating, I think. You can change the placement of your highlights or eliminate certain highlights. And then you can blend. Like here, I think I started with like maybe 3 colors. I have like this rusty dark brown as like a base, kind of like the purple on the fish guys. Then I maybe just did like a pretty bright blue gray. And just to map out the spots, kind of like the white on the fish. Just to make a map. It's not final. I'm just making a map of highlights, like where would it be? Like this wasn't pure white yet, but I just had a dark and I had a kind of almost light mid. And I was like, okay, highlight here, highlight right here. Okay, I'll try that. And then from there, I just go straight to white. Straight to white. Okay, if that's a spot where light is hitting, I'll make a smaller dot of white and it's really close to a dark. So all of this is just layer up from dark all the way up to highest highlight, but it's the area, the amount, and the vicinity. Like on your cloth, you can get pretty close to pure white, but such a small area is going to be that bright. Like this. Like this doesn't get all the way up to pure white. Close right here, right? But it's not as bright and it's not as large of an area as this area of white. It's still just light and dark. You got to think of it as all the painting is the same. It's all layering, but the same way that you're looking for places to highlight this cloth or this little leather thing, this hat, it's the same on non-metallic. Non-metallic metal is not different. Don't psych yourself out. That's what I did. Don't psych yourself out. It is the same principles. It's just the amount and vicinity of shadow and highlight. Like the size of the area of each. This has a little less blue. It has like less exaggerated blue. But look how reflective it looks, but how little is blended. Do you know what I mean? It's like you can sell the illusion with placement, which will read to you before you have to spend time blending. So like, for example, these 3 highlights are pretty intuitive. It's like these are the highest points. They're going to be highlighted, right? This bottom one is totally just an interpretation. You know, I just say, okay, on metal, like light kind of bounces around. I'm just going to decide that light is hitting this part as well, which sells sort of the bouncing effect. It's not necessarily even realistic that light is going to hit all the way down here. But it sells the effect, especially in a gaming miniature where it's like, I just want it to be dramatic. The reality on all these too is like they're skeletons. They should be like super beat up. But I pushed the effect to be really, really bright just for like drama, you know? So. Oh yeah, for sure. And Opa, if you're in the Dwarven Forge Discord, you can always tag me at Hamster with questions and photos and stuff as you're practicing this stuff. And the other members of the community will help you too. The cops are here. Nerd, Chris. Don't talk. I'm only here briefly, don't worry. Yeah, because you have your own nerd stuff to do. We're just painting fish people. These I painted earlier, but I'm just painting more of them because I have a bajillion of them. Then we're talking about non-metallic metals, so. And object source lighting. Where's my little ninja? My little cyberpunk ninja. What's fun about little models with effects like this is like you can almost just barely paint the rest of the model, and as long as you sell the effect, it will look cool. So it's kind of a shortcut almost. It's like if the surrounding stuff was like just barely base coated and you did the glow, it would still like look awesome, you know? It was kind of fun. But I still like to add texture and whatnot. Trying to think. Okay, here's a good example. So I think of something I was talking about earlier. I painted a lot of these raiders. Like I would do like one a week on the stream for like, I don't know, over the course of like a year. And I was starting with Black Prime, which is still fine. But trying to get to this place of saturation, now it works for raiders to be like grungy desaturated, so it's not a bad model, right? But that's kind of where when I sort of developed into starting with a lighter primer, going the full white sketch with glazes, and then even for a look like this, we could knock it down to something, but that is desaturated, but still has like the value contrast. So you can see how far like this has come. Like it's just way more readable. Sorry, I just punched my monitor. Here's another older one, you know. It's like still a fine model, but it doesn't have the same contrast. Oh, here's another cool model. This is like the device is like cloaking the person. That's kind of cool. It's a little tiger guy, and he has like a tiger wearing a cheetah print pattern. It's a cool one. So let's see. Let's try this gun. I do normally go fully black base coat for reflective things. Then I'm just gonna kind of do a bluish gray. I'm gonna maybe exaggerate the blue just for the ocean vibe. But at this point, I'm just kind of like trying to hit, because it's sort of a mid, I'm just sort of trying to hit edges. I even have it like some of this black paint is kind of wet. I'm not even worried about that. I'm just kind of trying to hit certain spots. And I can already sort of start to see a map of the areas that I can hit. And then I'm just already going to go straight to white. Because, like we said earlier, all acrylic paints are like have a certain amount of transparency. So as we build up this white and it dries, it's not going to look as white as the future steps of white that we add. So we're kind of getting away with like just using the same paint for a couple steps. Hit this bottom edge of the blade like that. But still not being super like precise. Like we rarely have to be, honestly, for gaming speed paints like this. Making sure we have high contrast edges. Make sure we have a map in place. And we're already looking pretty good. We're already pretty high contrast as it is, right? So now, smaller and smaller areas of pure white. Where's the light gonna... Almost think of lens flares, like a camera is looking at this. Where is the light gonna flare into the lens? Getting a little bit of a goofy area there. We'll fix it. We're just gonna keep moving. But already it like looks pretty reflective, you know? Yeah, I just like try to do a mid-gray for a map, a little sketch. You could theoretically do pure white and then fill in with gray if you want. Like there's no right or wrong way. It's more so I start with the gray so that when I go to white, it helps the opacity of the white. Just like, you know, a brown base is going to get better opacity on one yellow step above it than two yellow coats over black, you know? And then from here we have kind of a messy step, but I'm just going straight to black to fix it. And boom. It kind of fixes that weird part that I painted and gives us black. And then here I might go into black to make sure that we have the shadows really close to the highlights. Just penciling in some black in the recesses, some here black. And there we go. And then, you know, from here it's just like do more or less of that. So I'm going to go back to white, hit one more spot, be even more selective, you know? So even some of we're omitting some of the spots that we hit with white, and increasing the intensity of others. But yeah, I'm rarely like being super precise, like pencil precise. I'm just kind of using the side of the brush against perpendicular little edges. Tap, 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 tap. Do a little slash. Add some cool texture and like light effect. There's a little rectangular thing there. I'll hit that. And then I think it's good. And sometimes just for flair, I'll even do kind of a little you know, lineage like that. Like bouncing around. No texture. Go back to black, make sure the hand separation is there, and we still have to glaze over those hands that we missed. There we go. And there you go, really fast. That bottom blade again, giving a little weirdness. So see how this is end up like mostly gray with some white? It's going pure black. Some quick lines. And now it's contrasty again. And even this line like does look a little weird, but then you zoom out and it just like adds kind of a texture to it on the table. You like really zoom out to table view, you know? So again, that shows you that like the contrast and the placement is what sells it more than any smoothness, because if we're really zoomed up, it is not smooth. You see that? I can see even more of the roughness in this camera here with you than on the table, on the desk. But then we go zoomed out, right? I mean, look at that. That's why too the difference between like a display award winning like level of paint and the gaming paint is literally just time. Because if I were to do this like full display level for some reason, I would do the same thing. My placement would be pretty similar, and I would just take tedious hours to make the blend smooth, you know? Yeah, table view for sure. I mean, it depends on the purpose of the model, right? If you want to use it for gaming, you know, put it down on the table and stand up for a second and see how it reads, because that's its main viewing, like the main purpose. And then if you want to go to display, the thing too is I have a bunch of like large scale models that if I really wanted to go hardcore in a paint job, I have the stuff to do it, that I don't feel the need to do it on these because I will get frustrated. This is why I never had a Warhammer army growing up, even though I was a Warhammer collector, is I wanted every model that I painted to be the best paint job that I ever did, and so I couldn't paint 50 models for an army, you know? So I just like compartmentalize the projects in my head. Is like, this is tabletop, this is going to be for gaming, DF photos, you know, a fun thing to play with, versus like entering it into a contest or putting it on the shelf to display, you know. Yeah. I like starting in a model on Hobby Hang and making good progress on it, but I'm thinking about doing like some large scale stuff on here maybe and get some progress over time. I have a bunch of busts that I've like painted and repainted just for practice. We can try. Kind of cool. This is a cool one that I've never painted yet, actually. Be cool to get some metal effects going on here. $400 plus. Oh my gosh. I'm sure it looks awesome though. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, follow your sense, right? Like we all have that sense. And I just found that it's like, so I'm getting frustrated. Why? Well, I want these finished for the table. It's like, okay, are you setting yourself up to do that? Well, I'm making it a million steps. It's like, okay, so that's the problem for that purpose. It's not doing it wrong, it's just you're misaligned. Like so much of my painting is a practice of telling myself like, stop fiddling, move on, because I will want to get in there and do the blends and write. But I'm just like constantly telling myself like, move on, you can fix it in the future, and you're probably not even gonna notice what little thing is bothering you in like 10 seconds. I have, I have no sense. Okay, well. My display quality painting is mom's fridge quality. Well, that means we're all very proud. If it's on the fridge, like, that is a high honor. Or maybe just as an example too, I'm gonna paint, we're talking about this clothing. I have like some armor and clothing, so I'm gonna paint it all the same and just show you how similar non-metallic is to just any other layering. So basically I'm going to do a lot of this stuff like into a dark gray. But basically we're just going to do the non-metallic steps over everything and then just do none of the white over the cloth and stuff. And it will look like two totally different surfaces. So because we're doing that, I'll maybe start my gray a little bit darker. Not too much though, still be a mid-range. Some of this black paint is still kind of wet, so it's going to look fairly dark anyway. Slightly lighter. Okay, now I'm doing the previous mix that was like the first gray on the metal gun. And that will be the last step on like the non-metal parts here, I think. I hope that was all on camera. I forgot how zoomed in I am. And now I'm just gonna do the white on just the metal parts. And remember that the first white is kind of more like a really light gray because it's going to dry and be less opaque and less bright than the as we continue to add white. So this is a highlight, but it's not the topmost highlight. So like now this is realistic. I'm just like adding dramatic areas that are going to be highlights. And now we'll do a smaller and smaller area, especially on these little pointy small parts. I'll probably just start doing the speculars, the little lens flares, and call it good. Little selective tap tap. Okay. And then I've already mapped out these areas, so if I like them, I'll just exaggerate them. This one's a little weird, but the sculpted shape is a little weird, so it's high contrast. It kind of works for me. Another tap tap with some speculars to separate these. Like a lot of this area is bright, so I'm just making some of it even brighter, leaving less of it sort of a fuzzy white. Maybe here I'll even add a fuzzy area like that. That. Corners and edges I like to have a little dot. these two dots next to each other look kind of weird, so I'm just gonna mostly arbitrarily sort of cancel that one out, maybe. Still want something on the edge, but less dramatic, since we have it on this side. And there you go. Here, this shoulder needs one more. I'm just gonna change this little map, I think. Do it this way. Change my mind about the location, add the black. And what might be cool here is a little shape that adds a little corner of contrast there. There you go. Fast and easy. And the pants we can just leave. I mean, if we really want, we can do a really quick, like, final highlight just to hit some of this texture. Make sure it's all readable. And here is actually more exposed skin than I thought, so we'll just kind of cheat our steps. This is frog skin now. Get kind of our green going. I got a little impatient in that dark spot in the middle. I pulled off white paint there, but it looks fine. There we go. I still got to figure out what we're doing on the base, but maybe something like purple, pinky, coral type color would be cool. I mean, this kind of green, blue, gray is maybe kind of nice for the general floor. Kind of cool that it's monochrome a little bit, like it's underwater somewhat. Maybe the rocks, just for separation, could have a little quick highlight. Kind of like a, you know, the sunbeams are reflecting off the bottom of the ocean. Right? And then maybe some coral bits. I don't know if this is really very accurate, but I'll add it anyway just for interest. some little pinky organisms that are down here. This is one thing I've been enjoying, is just if there's like sand on the base, I'll often just do flowers or something as like little dots, because to scale a small flower, like you wouldn't even barely be able to like see the shape of it, so I just kind of cheat and make some little dots for flowers, doing something similar here. Maybe it's growing on this rock. Victory lap around the base, and there we have it. Maybe as long as we have this pink out. Make some eyes. Since this is kind of the same color as the pants, try to get this separated a little bit. Alright, not too shabby. Cool. Well, hey, thank you all for joining me tonight. I believe next week is the week I'm out of town. Yes. So no hobby hang next Thursday, but the week after should be just fine. 6 Eastern time. Oh yeah, I have some of those micro pens. I haven't used them in a while, but they're very nice. But yeah, thank you all for hanging out. Make sure to catch on the Anvil on Wednesdays in the coming weeks. There should be some exciting stuff. And we shall see you next time. Good night.